And welcome to another podcast by U.S. Tech Workers. I am your host, Kevin Lynn, and we're actually recording live today from our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And today, I am joined by John Miano, attorney, tech worker, author of the book Sold Out, which really kind of lays waste all the myths about employment visas, specifically the H-1B visa program. And I'm going to be talking to John today about something very, very specific. And that is a bill called H.R. 392 that was slipped in on July 25th into the House Appropriations Bill for Homeland Security. And this amendment, it was submitted by Kevin Yoder, a Kansas Congressman, in the dead of night in a verbal vote. And the name of the amendment is, and I'm going to give you this amendment because it's really important for you to, when you're calling your congressman and you want this taken out of the bill, this is the amendment to cite. And it's called Numerical Limitation to Any Single Foreign State. So without any further ado, John Miano, how you doing? And thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to be here.
Fantastic. So tell me, John, you might want to lean up a little bit closer to that mic. That's okay. Yeah, we still got you in frame. So, it's this H.R. 392, or as I like to call it, the Numerical Limitation to Any Single Foreign State Amendment that was put in by Congressman Yoder. That's real trouble for U.S. tech workers. And why is that, John?
Well, it's trouble for the entire country because this measure would create a train wreck in the entire immigration system. This is just a disaster waiting to happen, and it will be guaranteed to happen if this provision is enacted.
And John, this all deals with the lifting of country caps on work visas and green cards, correct?
Right. It's kind of innocuous. So we have to go back to a little bit of history here.
Okay, please, take us back, John. We want to know all about this. I want everyone to be really well informed on this.
See, prior to 1965, the United States had an immigration system that favored Europeans. And then in the height of the Civil Rights era of 1965, we passed the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 that established a system of diversity in immigration to replace the European-based system.
Right, and I have corrected a lot of people on the Immigration Reform Act of 65 because they think, oh, wow, it was supposed to just open up the borders to more people, and that's not true. It was just, as you said, just about increasing the diversity and not the numbers of immigrants.
Right. They said it wouldn't increase the numbers. It actually did increase the numbers, but the driving force was that it was considered discriminatory the way the system was set up. So what we did is we put in place that each country is limited to 7% of the various green cards.
Okay, so if there are 100 green cards being issued that year and you're from Swaziland, you can only apply for no more than 7. You can only get no more than 7 green cards.
You can only get a maximum of 7 green cards.
Maximum of 7.
And so the actual number for employment visas, there are 144,000, so 7% comes out roughly 10,000.
So the employment visas are under this country cap as well.
And that's where we're getting into trouble here.
Okay.
So what has happened is Congress has been making mistake after mistake. We often talked about our broken immigration system, but we rarely talk about how it got broken.
Yes.
And that story you probably need to talk about, the Immigration Act of 1990.
1990, so fast forward from 65 to 1990.
Up to 1990. The Immigration Act of 1990 is one that really made a total mess out of the immigration system. And that a lot of the issues we talk about now, diversity of lottery, H-1B visas, the temporary protected status, all of these came in the Immigration Act of 1990.
Who did this? Is there like one nefarious individual behind all this, or was it just a collective fart?
So there's probably a lot of blame to go around, but the chairman of the committee was Bruce Morrison of the House Immigration Subcommittee. So
that name's familiar.
Yeah,
It comes up a lot in immigration circles.
Yeah, he lobbies on immigration these days.
Ah, wow. He created a cottage industry for himself.
You might be able to say that. And what happened in 1990, they made a lot of changes. And in that, prior to 1990, guest workers were strictly guest workers, and immigrants were immigrants. So if you came here on a guest worker visa, it was very difficult to get a green card. Okay? So, but on the other hand, you knew what you stood. So if you come here on a H guest worker visa prior to 1990, you generally knew you're not going to get a green card.
There's an expectation. Yeah. It's an employment visa for a limited amount of time.
And you could plan. You had to maintain a residence in your home country, so you had a place to go back to. And then if your employer sponsored you for a green card, you knew you were going to be able to stay. Well, one of the things that the Immigration Act of 1990 did was it allowed H-1B and L visa guest workers to apply for green cards.
Oh, that's where that term dual intent came from.
Well, that's explicitly the term they use is dual intent. But I was trying to keep it simple for your read, but for the viewers. But it is called dual intent. And it's interesting that one of the stated goals of the Immigration Act of 1990, which was to reduce guest worker usage by doubling the number of employment-based green cards. But by allowing guest workers to apply to green cards then became a public-provided fringe benefit for employers to induce aliens to become guest workers.
You know, it's interesting. I want to bring something up. I pulled it off the internet this morning. And it is from, everyone's probably familiar with an outfit called Statista. They do some really good infographics. And they did an interesting graphic, and it was entitled, "The Most Attractive Countries for the World's Workers." Of course, the U.S. Finished number one. They interviewed some 366,000 people around the globe and found that of that, 34% preferred to come to the United States, most of them from the developing world. Now, get this, because when you talk H-1B, you're talking, large percentage are Indians. Mm-hmm. Well, shouldn't be as a surprise, and I'll read this from that infographic. The developing world had the highest desire for a relocation abroad, with 90% of India's respondents and 70% of the people in Brazil saying they would be willing to move to another country to get the right job. So if you can dangle the right job, and then you can dangle the potential for a green card and citizenship in front of someone, that's a pretty attractive package for someone looking to displace American workers with foreigners could throw out there.
Right, and it also keeps the worker bound to the employer for many years.
Oh, it's indentured servitude.
So, like I could say we come here 60 years, maybe 5 years into it, we'll apply for your green card. But the problem this creates, that would be obvious to everyone other than a congressman, is that if you have a low threshold system like green cards flowing into a higher threshold system like if you have a low threshold system like guest worker visas flowing into a higher threshold system like green cards, that's kind of like taking the 4-inch outlet pipe on your toilets and have them all merge into a half-inch pipe going out of the house.
So you have this huge backlog at this time, don't we?
Yeah, so that's what it creates. It was entirely predictable. And what might not have been so much predictable was how Indian interests were able to get in early and monopolize the H-1B program to the extent they have. And I mean, really, the H-1B program has been transformed into a vehicle for importing Indian labor. I mean, that's what it is, because no other country can break into the system now that it's been so successfully gamed by Indian companies. But so what's happened now is we're telling 85,000 people a year from India to apply for 10,000 visas a year. Okay, so we get a visa backlog. Now by 2000, that backlog had reached the 6-year limit of an H-1B visa.
So you have people that have applied for a green card, they haven't gotten into the system yet, and they actually should probably be leaving the country.
Right, and they would be falling off the end. But then Congress doubled down on its mistake in 1990 by allowing...
What else would we expect Congress to do?
Yeah, Congress in its infinite stupidity allowed aliens in H-1B status to remain in H-1B status indefinitely.
Oh my gosh, it's an indentured servitude.
Right, so they can apply for, so they can renew, indefinitely the H-1B visa. That had the absolute entirely predictable result of bigger backlogs. Okay,
even bigger and bigger and bigger.
So right now, this problem has a very simple solution. Make guest worker visas strictly non-immigrant. Force the employer up front to say, I'm hiring an immigrant or I'm hiring a guest worker, so the alien knows when they arrive that I'm staying or I'm going to have to go back. That'll never happen because there's so much money here.
And it's interesting you bring that up. While I was in a cab ride the other day, we were driving past the Capitol, and the driver goes to me and goes, you may not know this, but, he says, I didn't know it. When you look up at the top of the Capitol, under the pedestal under the Statue of Columbia is lit. And he goes, every time Congress is in session, it's lit. And I said, is it a white light or a red light? Because that is a house of ill repute if I have ever seen one. Because when we look at this H.R. 392, and thank you to the awesome U.S. tech workers who are helping put content on our Facebook page, because they're the ones that put this up for me. And it comes to us from opensecrets.com. And it's a list of 122 lobbying entries that are pushing the H.R. 392 Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants Act, which is essentially this amendment that Yoder put in. And so, I mean, this is the U.S. Chambers of Commerce. It is Deloitte & Touche, Texas Instrument, Kaiser Foundation Health Plan, TechNet, America Immigration Lawyers Association.
They're the prime beneficiaries of this.
Equifax. I mean, this is a who's who. Microsoft Corporation. This is a who's who of American companies, and they all seem to want this cheap, exploitable labor.
Yeah. Well, what would happen now, as I said, is that we're never going to have a reversion to the way the system was because the employers want foreign workers bound to them for years. If they forced them to set their status when they arrived, the employers wouldn't have control over them.
Right.
Immigration lawyers would be deprived of fees because they got to go through hoops to get a lawyer. And in fact, one of the things the Immigration Act of 1990 did was create 15,000 jobs for immigration lawyers.
I went to an event hosted by immigration lawyers in New York City a couple months ago, and I was just kind of I just walked in with everyone else, sat down, listened to the lectures, and they were basically selling these, students here on a student visa. These students here on a student visa, like how they were going to help them get an H-1B visa, and then there was some headhunter firm there that was going to sign them up and find them a job. And the reality is that's not true. I mean, that's not the way our system works anymore. It's not like a company identifies an individual they want to bring on. The whole system is dominated by these third-party, I call them displacement firms, that massively abuse this. They fill out all these LCA limited labor condition applications for the H-1B visa, tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of them, and flood the system with them.
Yeah. Well, then we move to the next level of this.
Let's
now
do it.
Congress has doubled down on their mistake.
No, John, they can't get more stupid than they already are.
Yeah. The depth of stupidity in Congress is infinite, and Kevin Yoder has demonstrated this. So after creating the mistake in 1990, doubling down in 2000, Kevin Yoder has decided he's going to triple down on the mistake by eliminating the per country quotas on green cards, which contribute to the Indian backlog. But keep in mind, this doesn't affect any other country. Only 3 countries are affected at all by the backlogs. It's India, China, and the Philippines, the 3 largest suppliers of H-1B workers. So it illustrates
Interesting.
the time.
So what if you're, okay, let's just say that in the California Democratic Party, they still have an Irish caucus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was funny. I got into a tete-a-tete once with the guy who headed it, at least at the time, probably still does. And, you know, I said, I'm not going to join your caucus, and I'm more Irish than you are, because I don't, think it's a good idea to have ethnic caucuses, but they're all over. How would should these, like the Irish caucus, the Polish American Union, shouldn't they be screaming bloody murder that none of their fellow countrymen are going to be able to compete for a green card?
Well, you would think so. They probably don't know about it because this is all being done at the dead of night. Because the effect of this eliminating the per country limits is that then the entire Indian backlog flows into the entire immigration system and pushes everyone to the end. So for several years, and there are various estimates on how long this will be, but somewhere between 6 and possibly 10 years, all the employment-based green cards will go to India. All of them. Okay? No one else. And then for some number of years, it looks like maybe 1 or 2 years, all the green cards will be going to India, China, and the Philippines. So if you're an Irish person, you'd have to start now to get in this queue. So what basically this bill does is it's great for India. So we have this huge Indian lobbyist supporting it.
And as I read from that Statista document, that 90% of the respondents in India are eager to relocate.
Right. So this is absolutely great for India because India gets all the green cards for some number of years. I said somewhere around 6, maybe 10 years. And then from then on, they get 75% of the green cards. So what we have here is the most radical change to American immigration policy in the nation's history. So this replaces our diversity system with an India first system of immigration. So you can see why India is all for it. It's great for India. The entire rest of the world gets screwed. And they don't know what's happening because, there's been no coverage of this in the mainstream media. Just none, zero. I've been contacting reporters all over and saying, that this has been going on. They don't want to do it. They're too busy trying to show that Trump is the nasty villain, and that's the only type of immigration story they want to do. So what's going to happen if this goes forward is probably next fiscal year, suddenly everyone's going to find out that you can't get a green card unless you're from India.
And it'll be too late.
Yeah.
It'll be too late then.
That'll be a giant train wreck. That's literally is a complete train wreck. It's a disaster in the immigration system. It's bad policy, but it's great for lawyers because lawyers benefit from chaos.
Gosh. Absolutely.
Just think of the business for lawyers here because now you're a company and you want to get a worker from the UK, where previously you could just go and hire them on a green card, or a worker from Senegal or a worker from Mali. You could hire them directly on a green card. You won't be able to do that. That means you're going to be going to lawyers. How in the hell can I do this?
Right.
So this is completely nuts. But thanks, Kevin Yoder, and I hope your name is going to be stuck to it. We're going to put Kevin Yoder train wreck when this happens.
Perhaps we can tattoo that to his forehead. Wow. Well, John, Mark Twain once said, "No man is safe while Congress is in session." And I think that's pretty much the case. And John, I want to thank you for coming by and sharing this important message with us. To me, the absolute most important thing for my audience to do is not send out snarky emails, not stalk your congressman on Facebook or a legislator on Facebook or share issues with your buddies in any form of social media, but call and write your congressman. I don't care if they're 180 degrees from you when it comes to immigration. They need to hear from their constituents. Whether they want to hear it or not, they have to hear from you because these lobbyists that I pointed out earlier, they spend a lot of money to get the attention of Congress because they do not have the numbers. Us tech workers, we have the numbers, tens, hundreds of thousands of us. We have to get active. We have to get active now, or it's going to be way too late.
That's it.
Right on, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, my U.S. Tech Workers audience. You guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. Keep that content rich on Facebook. Keep reaching out by email, and we'll tackle this bear.